Hey guys, welcome to my channel. I know this is not technically my first video, but it is the first video where I'm really sitting down and talking with you. So I thought today we would play the AuthorTube Newbie Tag, which was created by Jenna Streety. So here we go. So I found AuthorTube about 3 years ago, kind of toward the beginning of 2020. I had been sitting on some poetry that I had written in high school for quite a while, and I knew that I for sure wanted to release it as a book, but I didn't really know how to market it. I thought I figured out probably how to put the book together and kind of knew the layout I wanted, but I really had no idea how to market it. So I went to YouTube looking for some advice, and I found some different author channels, some different writing channels, and I really kind of started following. But I've really followed from afar for the last 3 years. In that time, I've released 2 poetry books, I've released a book of short stories, and I've released a children's picture book. And I never really felt like I had anything to offer AuthorTube. And after I released my children's book toward the end of 2021, I kind of stopped writing. I really haven't done too much creative writing since the beginning or the end of 2021. And so now that I've kind of gotten back into it over the last 2 or 3 weeks, I've had some ideas, some things I'm really excited about, and I decided that, maybe I do have something that I could offer, even if it's just having some fun, watching me write, doing write-ins, all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I'm really excited to be here and to be starting this. This is a tough one. As you heard in the last little bit, I have released 2 poetry books, a book of short stories, and a children's book. And now I'm starting to work on what I would consider to be sweet, small town / cowboyish romance book. Well, not cowboyish, it's featuring cowboys for sure. That's definitely going to be more geared towards adults, not necessarily specifically adults, like some teenagers and that kind of thing too, I'm sure, but so I write in a lot of diverse genres. But I've written, and we'll talk about this some more later, I've written some things in the past, and I would definitely consider myself to be best geared towards writing the teenagers / adults kind of genre fiction. But I love a lot of things, and I love writing in a lot of diverse genres. I love just kind of following my passion, whatever happens to be attacking me with an idea at the time. I like just following that and seeing where it leads. So if I got another idea for another picture book or some more poetry, some more short stories or something, I think that I would probably just kind of go with it. Whatever I was feeling at the time, I'm just going to kind of do that. But my main genre and what I'm going to focus on here for quite a while is that small town romance, cowboy romance series. There's 7 books that I have planned for sure for the series, and then some other little things that I'm hoping to plug in various places, which we'll talk about some more later. So yeah, I would say my genre is definitely, at least for now, going to be very romance, adult romance, teenage romance themed until further notice. My preferred tense is definitely past tense. I have tried so many times in the past to write in present tense, and it just does not work for me. I'll get 2 or 3 sentences in, I'll get in my head, and I'll realize after I write another 5 or 10 sentences that I have switched immediately back to past tense, and I can't save myself. Apparently, I am just meant to write in past tense, so that's what I do. I also tend to write in third person. I've dabbled very, very briefly in writing first person, and it's just not for me. I don't want to be my characters. I've never intended to be my characters, so I don't want to be that intensely in their heads. I like having a little bit of distance that third person allows so that I can still give some thoughts, which we'll talk about in just a second, like my preferred setup for books. But I like to be able to give the inner thoughts without having to be my characters, if that makes sense. So I'm definitely a past tense third person writer. Now, I never really thought that I would like the switching POVs where, you start from, say, in your romance book, you start from a female main character's perspective, and then you switch to your male main character and back and forth, etc., etc. But when I sat down to start working on this series, I realized that that is really something that I enjoy. I like the limited point of view of looking at the world from the main characters without having to be too omniscient and look at it from any of the side characters' perspectives. But I like to be able to switch so we can see the romance blossoming from the female character's side, and we can see the romance blossoming from the male character's side. So I'm definitely a past tense third person dual perspective writer, and that's not so much what you'll find with the short stories, but definitely when we get into this romance series, that's definitely what you'll find in my writing. So I would definitely consider myself to be a planster. And I never thought I would say that. I used to be, especially when I was younger and writing, I used to be a hardcore pantser. I was like, listen, I don't have time to sit around and try to figure out what I'm going to do. I've got the writing spark and I'm just going to go for it. I'm just going to do whatever it is that I decide that I'm going to do, and I'm going to let my creative muse run wild, and we're just going to have fun. And it worked for a while. But as I started to mature as a writer and my writing style started to mature, I realized that actually I do like to plan a little bit. And by what I mean by that is I really like to do a character profile. I want to know who my characters are, because I realized as I was writing and going back through some of the old stuff that I had written before, my characters were kind of flat. Or they would have detail and they would have some personality, and then partway through that personality would change because I hadn't really kept track of what it was that I was giving my characters for personality or giving them for background or hair color or that kind of thing. So I really believe now in definitely sitting down and having a character profile. It doesn't have to be stupendously thorough, but I like to have an idea of what they've been through, what some of their likes and dislikes are, how they as a character would want to get from point A to point B. So that has definitely changed in my writing. The other thing that has changed is that I like to have story beats. And if you don't know what story beats are, they're just like very generalized scenes that you would like to see. Different, almost like points, but not very well defined points of what you would like to see your characters go through over the course of the story. So I like to just have a very basic, I guess it would be kind of an outline that you would eventually end up with, to know that, okay, so my characters are going to go from point A, not knowing each other, to meeting, to having a date at the bar, to going out on a first date at the park, to getting dinner together, to having their first kiss. That is definitely a change from what I originally thought I would be like when I was very definitely in that pantser mindset. So yeah, I would say that a planster is really the best definition for my writing style at this point in time. So I am a self-published author, and I chose self-publishing for my poetry books, my short story book, for very specific reasons. And I think that in order to get into all of them and all of the reasons why, this would probably need to be a separate video. But the very generic reasons why are that I wanted control. I wanted to be able to choose my cover. I wanted to be able to choose when I released it. I wanted to be able to choose how much I was going to charge, where the book was going to be available, all that kind of stuff. And the other basic reason was that when I first started the publishing process for my very first poetry book, I didn't have a lot of money to sink into it. I needed to make my own cover. I needed to do my own editing. I needed to do my own laying out, all that kind of thing. And so self-publishing seemed to really fit for me. And to be quite honest, I've had really good luck with self-publishing. I've really enjoyed the self-publishing process, and I want to continue self-publishing because I want to be able to have every avenue open to myself for me to choose what's going to be best for my story. There is nothing, I have absolutely nothing against traditional publishing, and I highly applaud people who are able to get an agent and query different publishers and different agents in order to get their book traditionally published. Like, way to go. That takes dedication, that takes hard work, that takes the ability to get through a lot of heartbreak, because there's just so much that goes into it and so many no's that you get. And I know that. And maybe someday that's a route that I'll choose to take. But for right now, I really love self-publishing. I love being able to just be in charge of my own options and get to make my own covers, or get to have somebody make a cover that, looks the exact way it does in my head. I get to write kind of on my own deadline because I'm really busy in the other parts of my life, and I can't always write as fast as I'm hoping to be able to write. And so all of those things make self-publishing the best option for me. And there will be some times probably on this channel where I get into self-publishing and some of the nitty-gritty of it and some of the ways that you do it. So far, I've become really well acquainted with self-publishing through Amazon's Kindle program. Their system is really easy to use. It's really user-friendly, but I am going to be starting to explore some other self-publishing options that are going to give me the advantage of putting my book not only on Amazon, but on some other book-selling platforms as well. So as I start to learn about that for myself, I'll probably start sharing that with all of you here on the channel. So content. I have a lot of things that I would love to be able to do on this channel. Like I've said, I'm hoping to be able to talk about self-publishing. I want to do some kind of vlog style videos where I talk about my routine, the things that I'm writing, the things that I find that help, some of the different self-editing programs that I use and things like that. I have some different series that I want to try doing. I don't know if a lot of authors are like me, but I sometimes get the urge to pick up like prompt books and stuff, and I have probably 5-ish sitting on my shelf that I have either done nothing with or done very little in. And so I'd love to make a series where, we sit down and do a 20-minute sprint as a warm-up and try to just work through some of the prompts in those books. I'd love to do a series where I maybe rewrite some of my old stories or my original stories. I'd love to do a write-like series where I pick different popular authors, some of them in my genre, but maybe some of them outside my genre, and try to follow their writing routine for the day. I have a lot of different ideas. There's probably going to be a lot of different things on this channel, maybe some like genre or trope rating, different things like that. I just want to have fun, a place to share my passions, share my journey, and just do some fun writing related things. So hopefully someday soon I will get to a lot of that stuff. So I've always been creative. I've always enjoyed writing things. I've always enjoyed drawing and stuff like that. I think I wrote my first like real story that wasn't for a school assignment when I was 12. And from there, I just kind of started following my muse. I wrote a story about a mouse whose house got destroyed and he had to go on like a cross-country journey to find a new place to live. I wrote a really very skeleton-esque story about an orphan girl. It would have been kind of like a historical fiction romance-ish sort of novel. And I have about 1,000 other stories that I have started since then and not really finished all the way, or that I've just, they've been ideas that I've had for 5 minutes and I've written them down and then I've never done anything with them. So maybe part of the content, going back to the last section, maybe part of the content could be trying to pick up some of those and maybe make some of them a reality. I don't know. When I kind of quit writing in 2021, I was working on about 3 different things at the time, and I haven't gone back to any of them since. One of them was a fantasy series. It was going to be a trilogy. I have most of the first book drafted, I believe, so that might be something that I'll have to go back to. I had a kind of comedy romance-ish book that I was working on about a wedding gone wrong, and I have always really kind of liked the spooky mystery type genre, and so I had a collection of poetry and spooky short stories that I was working on at the time too. So those are all things that might eventually, after this romance series gets going, those are all things that maybe we will get back into. But yes, my first story, that was the question. My first story I wrote officially when I was 12. That first story was, it was probably all of about 500 words long, and it was about these 2 girls in school. They were, I think, 5th, 6th, 7th grade, somewhere in there, and one of them had purchased Valentines for the entire class, and the other of them didn't have money to get Valentines for everybody. I believe they just had enough money or enough resources to make a Valentine for the best friend. They were feeling bad because their Valentine didn't look as nice, it didn't look store-bought, etc., etc. And so they were feeling bad about their Valentine, and the girls eventually decided that their friendship was the best Valentine's Day gift that either one of them could get. Like I said, it was really short. I handwrote the whole thing because that's what I did when I started writing. As a 12-year-old, I handwrote everything, like in notebooks. I never typed anything hardly, so I still have all the handwritten stuff. And it was probably 4, maybe 5 notebook pages front and back. So couldn't have been very long, definitely not very detailed, definitely not very good, but that was my first story. It was inspired by a story that I read in a free magazine that my mom used to get at the grocery store. And I still have it somewhere, so maybe someday we'll break that out and explore it, and maybe I'll rewrite it and we can compare the two and see how I've grown since I was a young 12-year-old sitting in the house at the kitchen table working on stories. There are probably a ton of authors that I cannot even name that have influenced my writing. When I was a kid, I read all the time, everything I could get my hands on. Like, my only hobby was reading when I was a kid, before I really picked up that pen when I was 12 and started writing my own stories. But the main authors that I love are Ted Dekker. He is a Christian author who writes some, I don't necessarily want to call them horror, but they are like the battle between good and evil, deals with a lot of psychological issues. Some kind of they've got elements of fantasy to them and things like that. So definitely him. I've read like almost everything he's ever written, and I love it. My favorite book is Winter's Tale by Mark Helprin. Someday we will get into why I love that. Someday I'll do a video on it. But definitely that book has been a huge influence. For some of the horror mystery stuff that I like to write, I read a lot of James Patterson, still read some of him, and some Mary Higgins Clark. Those authors have definitely influenced my writing. But then as far as romance, I really love Nicholas Sparks. I've read a ton of Nicholas Sparks stuff. I've read some Christian romance authors, people like Jeanette Oak, Lorraine Snelling. I'm still kind of getting into the cowboy romance side, still doing some reading in that genre. I am enjoying Mandy Blake, The Longest Ride by Nicholas Sparks, definitely enjoying that story. And just a few others. Someday, soon, we will get into the books that I have read and am reading in that genre that are kind of influencing the stories that I am telling. So in an ideal world, I would schedule all my writing sessions and I'd be able to stick to it. I'd be able to do it at least 3 times a week. I don't live in an ideal world though. I live in my world, and in my world I am super busy all the time and things are coming up all the time, usually with only a little bit of notice. So I try to schedule writing 3 times a week. It doesn't always happen. Sometimes it gets interrupted or taken out completely, and I don't get nearly as much in a week as I want to get done. But on Thursdays, I try my very best to do a session of writing sprints, so that I have one day every week that I know for sure I'm going to get to spend at least 2 solid hours, if not longer, working on my books. And so for now, that has been where the bulk of my writing has come in. I would love to be able to schedule more stuff, and I'm hoping that with this channel and getting to work with you guys and write with you guys, I'll get to do some more of that. I'll get to maybe spend some whole days doing some writing instead of just a few hours here and there, a few rushed minutes here and there. But yes, so on Thursdays I do writing sprints, and maybe at some point we'll get to do some of those writing sprints together. For now though, I've been able to write 3 chapters of the very first book in this series that I'm working on, and 2 chapters of a book that's happening kind of alongside of that one, that I'm going to be offering to my newsletter subscribers for free once I get it done, to give them a chance to dive into my world. And I'll tell you at the end of this video where you can go to sign up for my newsletter. So yeah, I try to schedule writing sessions, but life is life and sometimes it just doesn't happen. These days, I write on the computer. I type pretty much everything, usually into a Google Doc, but sometimes into Word. Just depends on what I'm feeling, what I need that day, all that kind of thing. I used to swear by writing by hand. I have notebooks and notebooks and notebooks full of stuff that I've written by hand, but it just takes so long, and I hate getting hand cramps more than anything else in the world. Hand cramps and arm cramps are the worst. So I've kind of stopped writing by hand, although I do like to do some of my characterization notes and just notes like while I'm going back through and editing and things like that. I do like to do those by hand. I usually wind up printing out my first draft of my manuscript and marking all over it by hand. So I do that. I would love to be able to write by typewriter. I have one. It doesn't always work very well. I think writing by typewriter would be so fun, but I'm not sure that it would really be very productive because you would wind up having to type your novel twice. Although I will say that I think it would be fun to do the first draft on the typewriter, have that copy to mark all over, and then really actually write your second draft, which is probably the one that you're going to wind up using and modifying into your final draft on the computer. So maybe someday I will get a setup that works really well and I'm able to do it that way. But for now, I just type everything into a Google Doc or Word doc and then print it out and mark it up before I move on to editing into my second draft. I am really just looking forward to having community on AuthorTube. I feel like I don't always have a lot of community. I don't always have a lot of people that I can share what I'm working on with, share about my plots, share about my ideas, share about just, my love of writing and the things that I know. So I'm really looking forward to just having a place that I can go where I can share how everything's going. I participate in NaNoWriMo as often as I can, and I'd love to be able to share my progress, share some sprint days, be encouraging to other people who are doing nano or working on a story. Like, my goal with writing has never been to get famous or to make a name for myself, really. I've only ever just wanted to share stories because I love sharing stories. And if somebody in the world connects with something that I've written, then great, that's fantastic, and I'm so excited. But it's not really about being somebody well-known. It's just about doing it because I love it. So that's really what I'm looking forward to about AuthorTube, is just being able to share writing because I love it and because it's fun, and I know that it has been very healing for me and very helpful for me as I've gone through life, and I know that it's a creative outlet that's very helpful for a lot of people. So having a place to belong and a place where you can share and a place where you can talk about your passions is something that I'm really looking forward to. So yeah, I'm just really looking forward to the sense of community. Bonus! Whoop whoop! So my work's in progress. What am I currently doing? Like I've said, I am working on a 7-book series that is going to be small town romance, cowboy romance, kind of all rolled into one. The series is called the Lavender Mist Ranch series, and it follows 7 sisters, the Burke sisters, as they all kind of fall in love and find their places in the world. So the first book that I'm working on is the very first book in the series. It follows the 6th sister in birth order. Her name is June. And when the story opens, she is living in Nashville. And she meets a cowboy in a bar. And the story follows them as they go on a road trip from Nashville to Lavender Mist Ranch in Wyoming. I should add that Lavender Mist Ranch is going to be taking place in Wyoming, near Cody, Wyoming. And so, yes, that first story is going to follow them on that road trip from Nashville to the ranch in Wyoming, and just follow their love story. Concurrently with that, I wanted to have a story for my newsletter subscribers to really give them an opportunity to dive into my world, to look at my characters and my writing style, and get them excited about this series, because personally I think it's very exciting. So I am working on that story as well right now. I'm actually kind of paused in book 1 while I work on this story, and then I'm going to go back to book 1. So this free story that will be free for my newsletter subscribers is going to follow June's cowboy's best friend, who at the same bar where June and her cowboy meet, meets a bartender at the bar, and it's about their journey to fall in love, and it will tie into the ranch in Wyoming at the end. I'm not going to spoil anything. I'm sure there will be more details coming in the future as I get further into it and do some more writing and all that kind of thing. So those are the 2 things that I'm working on, but I have all of the other 6 books for the series, books 2 through 7. I have all of the plots lined out. I have the characters. I know the sisters and their birth order. I know who their cowboys are going to be. And I know some very basic details about the plots of all of them. This series is going to have an overarching plot about the ranch, as well as individual plots for each of the characters who are falling in love. And I have some other things I would like to write. Some of the weddings that I would like to write as novellas. A couple of other surprises that I don't want to ruin that I might consider writing into novellas or little freebie stories for my newsletter subscribers and all that kind of stuff. So before I close off this video, I want to talk about where else you can find me. I am on Facebook as Marlise Goodroad Author. I am on Instagram as Author Marlise Goodroad. I am on Twitter, or X, or whatever it's being called now, as Author Marlise Goodroad, and I actually am also on TikTok. I just recently started that a couple of days ago as Author Marlise Goodroad as well. So you can follow me there. And then I also have a website. The website is marlisegoodroad.wixsite.com/author. And that's where you can go to sign up for my newsletter, to learn about the different books that I have already released, my poetry books, my short story, etc. I have a little bit about the editing services that I offer on the side. I'm only taking very specific jobs on that at this particular moment, so that's not quite as interesting. But then I also have a blog over there too, where you can read about some of the different stuff that I'm working on, things I have worked on in the past, etc. So I will have all of those social media accounts, as well as my website for my newsletter, linked in the description box below. And yeah, hopefully you guys learned a few things about me today that maybe will keep you coming back, and we'll get to hang out and do some more writing and book related things together in the future. So thanks for checking out this video, and I'll see y'all later. Bye!